Thanks
I'm
everybody for joining us. We're going to pull up our slides right now so you can take a look. So we had this question prompt for those of you who might have come early, just thinking about children's imaginations and learning. We're going to be talking about that during our e-seminar today. We've had the great privilege of starting and founding our institute called the Institute for Imaginative Inquiry. Jessie, do you want to scroll through the slides? Great. Imaginative inquiry is really a way to engage students using drama in the classroom. Now that is challenging these days now that we're working online. We've come up with some ways that we can continue to incorporate using children's imaginations and even using drama doing online lessons. So just to begin, again, my name is Elaine Chu.
And I'm Jessie Kirk.
And we are co-founders of the Institute for Imaginative Inquiry, along with our colleagues, Ella Moran and Kelly Dawn Holsapple. Should we, Jessie, can you advance? And we founded our institute really with the mission to bring progressive practices to the classrooms using the methods of imaginative inquiry, which is to use drama and children's imaginations in classrooms. We are all teachers. We teach both in New York City and on the West Coast in LA. And even though I'm not in the classroom, I'm working with schools and often get to be in the classrooms working with teachers using this method. We believe that children's imaginations is really one of the greatest assets that they have. And to be able to harness this for learning, for their learning, and to use for us as teachers is an incredibly valuable resource. The fact that children can step into imaginary worlds means they are already knowing how to build a context around them. They're creating stories. They're able to explore and play, which means they can try on different scenarios. They can be different people. They can imagine being in different places. It requires very little effort to already engage students in this type of learning. At the same time, they are role-playing. They are stepping into other people's shoes. It's allowing them to take on multiple perspectives and empathize with other points of view. And they naturally create problems that needs to be solved through their play. And so for us as teachers, for us to be able to use that as a way to dive into solving problems, to dive into inquiry, and allowing children to then collectively make decisions is really what learning is about. So today, what we are hoping to do during this e-seminar is we just want to quickly introduce what imaginative inquiry is, talk a little bit about what it has meant, what it looks like in the classroom, but then we do want to quickly move into how we've adapted it for remote learning.
So we are just going to begin by going pretty quickly through sort of the three parts of imaginative inquiry and really the heart of what it is. The first one being, of course, inquiry, and just the idea that when you're using imaginative inquiry, the process of learning is a collaborative process, a process in which students are exploring, they're asking questions, contributing ideas. Teachers are really there to guide and support and help guide the story, but really there's facilitators of that exploration rather than just delivering material and information. And the learning and the lessons themselves are really planned around inquiry and essential questions and authentic problems that students can explore and grapple with and eventually, apply to other situations as well. And all of these experiences, of course, end with reflection and evaluation and sort of thinking about what they've learned and taken away. And that's really the inquiry piece, which I think is really the heart of a lot of progressive education anyway. But now it's sort of combined with these other elements is what makes it unique to Imaginative Inquiry. And then, of course, there's the drama for learning piece, which is the idea that we're utilizing students' imagination, their interest and ability to play. And then we're using specific drama conventions to actually get them to explore situations, contexts, problems. So drama conventions like narration and pantomime and many others. We'll touch on a few today specifically, but there are, of course, many others as well. But the idea that students are really becoming people involved in real life events, and it feels like it's happening now, and there's that element of tension as well as different points of view, and that's the drama piece. And then the third piece of Imaginative Inquiry is something called Mantle of the Expert. It was designed by Dorothy Heathcote in the UK. And the thing about Mantle of the Expert is you can have Imaginative Inquiry and use drama for learning without Mantle of the Expert, but you can also do it with. So it doesn't always have to be happening for Imaginative Inquiry to be happening. But Mantle of the Expert is the idea that students become some sort of team of experts who are, have certain responsibilities and the power to make certain decisions. And oftentimes they actually aren't starting out as the experts, but by becoming the experts, they then have to do certain research or develop certain skills. And they're usually, the drama piece, the imagination piece is that they're usually working for some sort of client on a specific commission, and then they're be given certain tasks that they have to do, all within the context of this imaginary context where they are a team of experts exploring something. And then within that mantle is where the curricular work really happens. So you can create a mantle for any curriculum you have. We do a whole year-long one. It can be a shorter one, but you can still use the curriculum that you have, just putting it within this imaginary context of a mantle of the expert. And then for us, there's also really the piece of teaching social activism. We really feel strongly that Imaginative Inquiry is a great way to teach, especially history and social studies, through the lens of a variety of perspectives, and really thinking about history as a people's history. So finding those stories, those voices that haven't necessarily been uncovered before. So really disrupting Eurocentric paradigms when teaching certain history. Bringing out traditionally marginalized voices, giving students a chance to take on diverse perspectives in order to really strengthen their understanding of identity and social justice and action. And so for us, that's a really important piece as well.
So really, the beauty of Imaginative Inquiry is to suddenly put teachers and students on somewhat of the kind of a level playing field where we are all participants in this greater drama. And so rather than the teacher saying, okay, so now we're going to do the study and this is what I want you to do, suddenly the drama itself presents a problem, and the problem is what allows all of us to engage in it. And so there's a greater sense of purpose as we all enter the drama. I do want to take just a brief moment to explain how we start using Imaginative Inquiry in our classrooms. This is really important. We establish this early in the year, the same way we would establish our norms for our classroom and kind of the rules and routines of the classroom. We take time to practice it. We take time to go over it frequently in the beginning until students are familiar with it, and to continue to remind students what we're doing here. And the main thing that we want to stress is that this is not drama like acting in a play. So in the beginning of the year when we're introducing it, we really talk to students about what do they know about drama. Often they'll equate it with memorizing lines for a play. And we talk about how it's really more about creating a story together. It's something where we're all participating the same way we would all participate in a game. There's certain rules for the game. If there are certain people who don't play by the rules, then it's really not fun anymore. But that the real purpose of this is to pretend and to use our imaginations. And when we're pretending, we can really be different people. We could be in different places. Suddenly, we're not who we are as what we imagine our own identities to be, but I'll say if I'm female, I can imagine and pretend to be male. If I'm an adult, I can pretend to be a child. So now we can really kind of play and take on different roles. But the important thing is that we ask them to be themselves. They are not acting the way they think somebody else would be acting. We stress this, that we really don't want to stereotype, that it is, that would be something that would be offensive to another culture, to another group, that all we're doing is presenting a situation, and we're asking the students that if they were in this situation, knowing what they know about it, knowing about the kind of the factual information of the context that we're creating, what would they choose to do? So there is this sense of having to kind of say yes and. So in other words, you wouldn't try to ruin it by saying, if this is, we're pretending we're living in a time long ago, suddenly pointing out to the lights on the ceiling and say, well, why is there electricity? That we're imagining the scenario together, and that they're stepping in and really coming in as participants and imagining what they would do or say in that situation. And we really tell them that it is structured. So there is a story that the teacher is going to start narrating, and they need to listen very carefully to see where the cues are and what the prompts are for them to do. So there is a very structured element to imaginative inquiry. And then of course, we make it very clear when we're going to be starting the drama. So we're not trying to, trick them, or, it's not as if we're leading something and they don't know what's going on, right? So we give a very clear action. We say 1, 2, 3 action to begin, and we say 3, 2, 1 cut to end the drama. So it's very clear when we are doing drama. And then what we would do after that is ask them to do a very small practice run. This would probably take place during a morning meeting, and then eventually we would then build it into some lessons that we're doing. So what we're going to ask you to do right now is to indulge us. I know we're all in front of our computer screen, but what we would normally do at a workshop is we would invite you to do a little practice run with us, and I'm going to ask you to do the same at home. So just imagine that we are in a classroom together, and I am going to just begin a story, and I want you, by listening to the story, figure out where we are, who you are, and as you figure it out, as you hear the narration, I would like you to just do whatever motions, just staying in your place, but doing whatever motions that go along with the narrative, okay? And then at the end, I might ask for just a few people to participate, and you'll hear the prompt. And at that point, if you want to raise your hand, we'll call on a couple people. Okay, so we're going to begin our drama by saying 1, 2, 3, action. It was a hot day at the archaeological dig site. The archaeologists had been under the sun now for 4, maybe 5 hours, digging at the site that was this really important site that was found in the middle of Central America. The archaeologists were using various tools, digging. Some of them were plotting the stakes to mark off the grids for the sites. Some of them were marking it on the maps. Some people had their trowels and they were digging carefully in some pits. There were other people who were taking some shards that were collected and sifting it through a sifter to collect some of to separate the bigger pieces and the smaller pieces. There are yet other people who found certain fragments and were taking a brush and carefully dusting it off, bagging it, labeling it so it could go back to the lab. Everybody was under the sun, thirsty, hot, when suddenly somebody said, wait, I found something. We all went over to see what it was. Raise your hand if you would like to share what it is that you found. And then we can maybe call on somebody. Marcy, can you help with that?
Sure, I'm not seeing any raised hands in the participant box. Let's look at pictures.
Can you bring it to gallery view? All we're seeing is the page.
Yeah, it would help right now if you were not sharing your screen, then everyone could see each other.
Sure.
Somebody answered. Shelby, you want to speak up?
A piece of pottery, a shard, has an ornamental design on it. It seems like it's made out of clay.
Wow. So if it's made out of clay, it must be really fragile. Let's really be careful about when we bag that up, and let's find out exactly how old that is.
Okay.
Anyone else? What else did somebody else find? Yes. Kate?
Someone, oh, go ahead. I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Oh, wait.
They can, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do you need to unmute yourself?
A bone, long bone.
A bone. How big is it?
It's about 2 feet long.
About the size of someone's, I'm losing the name.
Oh, so
A bone.
an elbow. So it seems like both of you are digging in the same area. Wow. So
Yeah.
what do you think it could belong to, given the size?
Okay, it's Ruth.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi.
So what given the size, what do you think it could belong to?
It's an animal bone.
It's an animal bone.
How big?
It belongs to a deer.
Yep, I agree. That's
Wow.
that's my forte, actually, as opposed to any kind of ceramic artifact, is the animals.
Wow, that is amazing.
Kate's a lot better at actually like diagnosing what it is on the spot.
Really? So Kate, it sounds like you've actually done some lab work also, right? So that you can actually already start examining the bones there.
Yes, that's exactly what I used to do.
That's amazing. Okay. Well, the archaeologists continue to do their work. There is so much more that we're going to discover about this site and who lived here and which animals were around. And maybe eventually we can paint a real picture of the life that was happening around here. Okay, 3, 2, 1, cut. Right, so that was just a little snippet. We probably would take a few more comments from our students and really give them a taste of, you know, again, just how low risk this can be, right? So they can really say, they can bring their own ideas into it. We leave it very open-ended. Yes, sometimes we get silly comments, but we try to fold it in as much as we can into the drama so that they really get a sense that they're also helping to create the story. So what, let's see. What that particular drama convention was called was a narrative pantomime. And we're going to talk about a few of the conventions that really form the cornerstones of most of the drama lessons that we do in our classroom. There are many others that are available. They are not exclusive to Imaginative Inquiry. These are drama conventions that are used in process drama lessons all the time. But we really, again, use them as a way to build a context to create a problem for students to solve that over a series of lessons can deepen and really draw them into a real full and deep study. So the first one, which is narration and narrative pantomime, is some used in every season. The real difference is narration. There is a narrator. The teacher is usually narrating and describing some kind of scene and setting up a scene for students. This is great for starting a lesson, to put them into a particular setting, to put them into a particular context so they really understand who they are as characters. Very similarly to the way even just that one sentence saying that we were at the archaeological dig site, the archaeologists were hard at work, immediately already gave everyone a sense of the place and who they were. It can also be used as a way to transition between different points in the story narrative. But again, it's a way for students to begin visualizing this world that we're asking them to step into. The narrative pantomime is giving them the narration, but also asking them to do some motions while the narration is going on. Sometimes we have students kind of milling around the meeting area, and as they are hearing the narration, they are walking as if they are a character, and what would that character be doing as they're walking through the streets, or as you were doing, as you were digging at the site, what are some things that you could be doing given the prompts that you were given about the different tools that were available. And so students, again, are silent. They're doing kind of the motions as they hear the narration. And it's really a great way to set the scene, but also provide information to students. So again, as in the dig, already we were listing certain tools that the archaeologists were using. Sometimes it might be listing the different activities that might be happening within a group of people. And what it allows children to do in a very low risk way is to become a group of characters in this drama. They're not assigned roles here. They're just a group of people. They're kind of this generic same group, and they're already imagining themselves in the story. So we have 2 clips that we want to show you with students engaged in narrative pantomime. And let me just tell you what they are before we play the video clips for you. The first one are kindergartners, and this was part of their bird study. I am narrating what behaviors certain birds are doing. So in this scene with the kindergartners, I'm narrating what the house sparrows are doing, and they are going through the narrative pantomime.
Patch of dirt where there used to be a tree, and now that tree is gone, and there's just a patch of dirt. And what did he notice? He noticed the sparrows, the house sparrows. They were taking dirt baths in the spot where the tree got cut down. They fluttered their wings to beat up the dirt. And then when it got really dusty, they fluffed up their feathers. They fluffed them up, and then they combed the feathers down with their beaks. Okay? So this whole area is your dirt path, so you can actually walk around and use your wings to fluff up the dirt. They love that. The dirt helps them to fluff up their feathers even more. Okay? Then they fluffed up their feathers, and then they use their beaks to comb them down.
So the videos are a little bit glitchy. When we share the slides, you'll have the videos available and you can watch them again. So in that classroom, the class of students were divided into 6 different bird groups, and so there was a narration that went with each of the bird groups. So when I called on them, you can even see they're all wearing different color bandanas. They knew when it was their turn to do the narrative pantomime. In the second one, you won't hear the narration because the video was actually made for a different purpose. So there's kind of a soundtrack over it. But the reason I want to show you that one is because the narrative pantomime doesn't always have to be kind of a more spontaneous, do the motions as you hear the narration. Sometimes their students are directed to just pick one motion that they're going to do repeatedly, almost like a machine. And they will just do it over and over again, the repeated motion, sometimes with a repeated sound, while the narration is going on. So it's almost like the different parts of the machine are brought to life through the narration. So in this scene, you'll see a couple of students doing the repeated motions, doing the pantomiming, as there's a narration about the men's and women's jobs in New Amsterdam.
Oops, sorry.
So that's just a little snippet, but you know, it's a great way to have students who may have already done a lesson or read an article about, for example, different jobs that were done around the household, to then kind of show what they have learned about those jobs through the actions and the motions. Another great convention that is used, especially in the beginning of a lesson, is called roll in a bag. And that one uses the idea of objects that belong to a character that are found in a bag. And so the students look through the objects, look at every object to try to discover whose bag it is. And really it's a way to introduce characters. So this particular bag starts a lesson on the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. And as the teacher, I would pull out one object at a time and have students look at it and talk about what they are learning about the character from the object. So maybe starting with the spool of thread. Okay, she's a seamstress, somebody who sews. And then taking out the other objects, the other artifacts, such as the passage on the steamship. It gives a date and a country and a name. Passport also shows that she's from Germany, so that she's traveling in 1909. The food is probably what she's taking along with her. And then the final object would be a letter. And then we open the letter, of course, to see what it is. And we find out that it is a letter that looks like she has started writing. And in this letter, I'll just read it very quickly. We find out a lot about this character, and it really sets up the whole context for the rest of the lesson. September 9th, 1909. Dear grandmother, I am sorry that I have not written in a while. I miss you terribly. Every day I remember the smell of the warm green fields around the village and I imagine your kind smile. It has been 3 months since I crossed the ocean on the steamship with thousands of other immigrants. Everyone seemed to have a spark of hope in their eyes, even though many had suffered in the places they were leaving behind. I saw Lady Liberty in the harbor, and while everyone cheered, all I could think about was missing you. I'm happy to have found a way to use my sewing skills to help Mother and Sarah and John. I found a job at the shirtwaist factory sewing shirtwaists. I was thrilled at first. As the days go by, I'm finding that the work is difficult and the hours are long. I work from sunrise until well past sunset. I barely have time to sleep or think. I dare not complain though. People who speak up about anything are fired. Just the other day. And then I guess she didn't finish the letter. So again, these objects are pulled out slowly, giving students kind of time to really build their discovery of who this person is. And at that point, they have a good idea of who this person is, what the time period is, and what the situation that the character, what kind of situation the character is in. And from that, we could then begin the lesson by perhaps inviting somebody to play that character in the factory where she is, right? So we would have a discussion about, okay, she's a seamstress, what would she be doing? What would the factory look like? Can somebody sit in this chair and just show us a position, put her in a position or sit in a position that might show what she's doing in this factory. And we would just keep building the scene. So then we add 3 more people. 5 more people until the whole class is joined and have formed 2 rows facing each other where they are all the seamstresses in this factory. And then we might begin a narration where they're asked to pantomime with the narration. And then we bring in other characters, and then we bring in a problem. And so the whole lesson evolves from beginning with just examining who the character is with this mystery of this bag. One of the other drama conventions that we use all the time is students in role, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's really putting students in role. So there are times when a drama might just be a narration to just kind of give them a context, and then it kind of leads us into, you know, just a discussion about what's going on. But what we really try to do is put students into a role where they are characters and there's a problem for them to solve. And of course, often what that means is we teachers are also playing a role. Now, the students, again, can play a role where they are all kind of one group of people, a kind of generic group of people. Or sometimes we might assign roles to bring out different points of view. The main thing here is to set it up so that it's open-ended. And again, it's not a simulation. And for us, the difference between an open-ended context versus a simulation is that a simulation is really just imitating an event that already has happened, right? So perhaps we would say, even the triangle shirtwaist drama could be a simulation if we just said, if we gave them already the outcome of what would happen. What we do instead is we lead them through a drama where they have to pretty much decide what are they going to do at any given moment. There is a moment where somebody introduces the idea of joining a union meeting that might lead to a strike. And in the end, we know, we teachers know that there was a strike, but it's not something that we tell students. We give them the opportunity to debate and decide what they're going to do. And through the drama, we even heighten that sense of debate by putting them on opposite sides where they even have to try to convince each other to either join the strike or not to join. So it's really putting them in this moment of history has not been written yet, and it could have gone in many different directions, which really is the way events evolve, is the way history evolves. It's never a done deal. It's really a series of decisions that are made by people, and there are probably always people who had a differing point of view. So history really can go in many different directions. We wanted to just show you a clip of students that we ended up assigning roles to. This is from a drama that we did in our 3rd grade New Amsterdam study. Prior to this lesson, the students have learned about Henry Hudson's voyages and the Dutch West India Company's interest in trading in the New World. And so the students in the beginning of this drama are, through a narrative pantomime, they are Dutch citizens walking around the streets of Amsterdam. There's a narration about who they are, the different people who would be found in these streets of New Amsterdam, different jobs, different roles. A town crier comes and gathers them up and gives them information about wanting to recruit people to go live in the New World. And so they're basically told what the offer is. The offer is that their passage would be paid, they would be given equipment and supplies. It's a contract for 6 years, and after 6 years, they could end up owning their own piece of land, which again, the students are told is something that does not generally happen because land ownership is passed down through the family. So the fact that they could be people who are not landowners becoming landowners is something very special. at which point we break them up into groups. They are given different points of view as members of a family. We then move to them going home, being the 5 members of this family, and they have to have a conversation based on their points of view of whether they should go to the new world or not. And just to let you know, the way, because there are only 5 points of view, but there might be 20 or more kids in the classroom, we do it as a kind of a fishbowl type situation where we start with 5 children, but then the other people who are playing the same role kind of tag in and take turns kind of leading that discussion. So here's a little clip of that.
I heard that death risk in the company is recruiting families to go to the new world, and I think we should go because it's a good experience. As a mother, I think that we should not go because and we don't know what's on that land, and since none of us have been there before, don't know.
I don't think we should go because there may be dangerous experiences and we are taking a big risk. We could get hurt or never return. I don't think it's fun because we're just going to be super hard to work. We have to bring all of our tools to cut down the trees. It's a lot of hard work.
I'm tired of the rich making us work. If we own the land, then we'll be like that.
Okay. Elaine?
Yeah.
Okay, for the sake of time, I think I'm gonna just skip this question. It's just something we wanted to pose to everyone to think about, just now that you know a little bit about imaginative inquiry, thinking about how this method really changes the teacher-student paradigm. So leave you with that to contemplate. And if you do want to have any thoughts that you want to get down, you can, welcome to put them in the chat. But we definitely want to leave a little bit of time for talking about how we think this can look with remote teaching, which I'm sure is what everyone is thinking a lot about right now and wondering. And as we are in, I think, our 4th week at LREI of this, you know, Elaine and I both have had a chance to create some lessons using what we've had from Imaginative Inquiry lessons, and then obviously tweaking it. So I'm going to give you an example of one. You know, we were really thinking about like what is at the heart of imaginative inquiry. So what can we still do? We can still tap into imagination, the idea of play. We can still tap into that, the problem solving and the inquiry piece. And we can certainly use things like narration and you know, ask kids to do things. Of course, what's not there is the community piece of us all being together, but at least at our school, we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings, and so we have been able to reflect using those opportunities. So one lesson when we came back from spring break, before we had gone, we had just finished up our unit about the Lenape, and so we are sort of now shifting the perspective to get into a New Amsterdam study. And so this is a lesson about the Lenape encountering the Hudson and his crew for the first time. And so I created this lesson. We are using Seesaw. I'm sure some people are using Seesaw and other things. I'm actually just going to show you the lesson really quickly. Hopefully everyone can see this. So on Seesaw, I created this lesson where they have to watch this series of narrations. So each one, they click play. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of them, but we do our usual 1, 2, 3 action. We have our countdown, time travel, get your time machine ready. We count down from 10, and then the narration begins. So hopefully you can.
You have landed on Mannahatta in September 1609. What do you picture around you? One day, the Lenape men and women were busy doing their daily jobs, and some Lenape men and women went to the place where the sea widens to go fishing. They set up weirs, traps, and smoking and drying racks. Suddenly, far in the distance, they saw a strange shape floating on the water, unlike anything they had ever seen before. So, the men and women immediately took off for home to tell the people of their village about the amazing thing they had just seen.
So, oh, and I forgot to mention that there was a prompt in the directions too. When you are given a question, make sure to stop and pause and think about the question.
Many people wanted to go back out with them to take a look at the marvel, and so they all hurried out together and were astonished by what they saw. None of them could agree as to what it was. Some of them said that it looked like a large fish or animal, and still others thought it was a great house floating on the sea. As they watched it, they saw that it was moving towards the land and decided it must be an animal or some other living creature. Runners and numerous canoes were sent out to carry the news to all of the scattered chiefs that they might send off in every direction for the warriors with a message that they should come immediately. The warriors arrived in great numbers, and having viewed the strange appearance and seeing that it was moving towards the river that flows two ways, said that they thought it was a remarkably large house in which the Creator himself was present, and that he was probably coming to visit them.
So I'm just thinking for the sake of time, I'm just gonna skip through a couple. So there's a couple more questions that they're sort of narrated and then prompted to think about, stop and think. And again, if we were in class, we would have them, you know, thought tapping, we would have them sharing their ideas. So encouraging them to stop in their home and act and think about these questions. And then at the end, it ends with this. This is the last slide.
The chiefs were struck with wonder at the dress, manners, and appearance of the unknown strangers, and particularly with the man in the red coat with gold trim. They thought he must surely be the great Manito spirit, but they wondered.
And so it ends with them, as in the perspective of Lenape, having to ask some questions about these people that they're seeing for the first time. And so they're given the directions to, edit this template, write down some questions. And what I did the next morning at my morning meeting, Zoom morning meeting, was I had typed up, based on their Seesaw responses, all of the questions that they had submitted, and I displayed this during our Zoom meeting, and we talked about, they asked, I asked them to pull out what were the ones that you were wondering the most, and we highlighted those and talked a little bit about them. So we were still able to have that community conversation about their questions.
Jessie, there was a question in the chat box about this, asking if what you showed us was an announcement or type of post, or is it an assignment activity?
Great question. It was an assignment on Seesaw, and so they knew that they had to go find their social studies assignment and listen to it. And so that was at the end, they had to submit their questions.
I also noticed another question about whether students are recording themselves, and in this case they are not. For some of those prompts, they're just stopping and thinking. But in this lesson, you'll see a place where they can record themselves, and I have also made lessons for some other classrooms where kids are prompted to record themselves on Flipgrid, which is another way that they can videotape themselves and share their videos where they can see the videos of the posts of all the kids in their classes. But in this lesson, this next lesson that I created for second grade, we had already begun some lessons on the city government in second grade using drama. Just to let you know, the framework or mantle for this particular unit was that they were asked to work on a show called The Perfect City Show. They realized New York City is not perfect. Oh no, that ruins it. So then the kids realized, wait, we can still do a show, but instead of it being about a perfect city, it's about how New York fixes the problems in the city, which leads them into learning about how New York fixes the problems in its city. So they learned about different New York City departments. And then they were playing 311 call center, where they were getting calls in with problems around the city, and they had to send out workers to fix the problems. So the Seesaw lesson that was created kind of took them through, this was one of the first lessons, again, coming back after the break. So they had done the drama, and that this was to kind of get them back into doing the drama, but doing it online.
Let's start our drama. 1, 2, 3, action. Well, you did it, second graders. You were able to save our show. You went out and interviewed all the people from the different departments of our city government. This is what you found out. The Department of Transportation repairs streets, bridges, tunnels.
Sorry, Elaine.
So I think we can fast forward. This was just kind of going over what they did in the previous lesson to review the city departments and to remind them with these pictures that they did this wonderful drama. So here they're back at the 311 call center.
You want me to play this one?
Yeah.
We are now live at the 311 call center in New York City. I think there's some calls coming in right now.
Okay, and then Jessie, you can put up
311.
So I end up reading these cards, but basically these are the 6 different calls that came in that went to the 6 different departments that they studied. And that leads them to their assignment. So they, depending on the department they studied, they took one of the calls with a problem, and their assignment was there were 3 parts. One was to find it on the map, and using Seesaw, they could actually circle the location on the map that was indicated in the call. Then they had to fill out a work order, which they could do online, or we also gave them a PDF that they could download and do on paper and upload, where they had to basically write what was the problem reported, and then what their solution would be. So this is the problem solving part, that they have to kind of figure out what is the solution to the problem. And then the last piece was to take a picture of themselves as the workers out there fixing the problem. And here's an example that I gave them of myself filling a pothole. And then in the next slide, you will see what some of the kids posted.
Sorry.
So these were the pictures that they posted in their Seesaw, class Seesaw. So, somebody calling 311 and locating on the map. You'll see here for the work order down here, her solution was, she said she was this was air pollution around Lincoln Tunnel, that she was going to test the air and make sure that it was clean for people. And she said, don't worry if it's not safe, because she would make sure that she would come up with rules to make sure the air is clean and for ride sharing. And here's a picture of her testing the air. And then there were 2 kids who posted pictures of making bike lanes, one actually putting down a strip of tape on the road, and another one pretending to do it in his home. And on Seesaw, there's even an option to record. So instead of writing it down, if they want to just say what they're doing, they can do that.
There are actually quite a few questions in the chat box.
Yeah, now's the time.
Great.
So
let me unshare so we can, is that
See
the best
each
idea?
other.
So we can see each other?
Good.
Okay, sorry. Great.
So looking back, one of the questions asked if you had narrated the story behind the visuals, and where were you able to resource illustrations?
So a lot of the things that you saw, at least in the one that I created, are from a slideshow that we already had that we used in class during our drama in class. And so I just took them and put them into Seesaw. And also, frankly, the narration was from a drama, a script that we had already created. And I would have done the same narration in class, although the students probably would have been doing some narrative pantomime and certainly sharing out loud their answers to the questions. But we often have slideshows up in the classroom to kind of give them some context, some visual. So a lot of the pictures and the stories, the narration, the language that we used is not made up. We've gotten it from resources, books, and other resources that we have about this curriculum. So.
And there was a question that basically was asking about synchronous versus asynchronous work. Were you with the students when they watched the lesson, or was this happening independently at another time?
these Seesaw lessons were independent. So they were given it on Seesaw and did it on their own independently. And then we did the wrap up, you know, at our live Zoom meeting the next day where we talked about the questions. For the most part, the ones that we've done on Seesaw have been independent, and then we've given some time at one of our Zoom meetings to just reflect or talk in breakout groups about what they remember, or give them talk about the question that they had to answer on Seesaw.
And someone, Madeline, wanted to know if this work was, who the work was shared with. Were families invited to see the work?
I think the families are automatically involved because the kids are young. Definitely for the second graders, most of the time the parents are helping them to access the assignments and upload images.
This was more a question, thank you so much. This was more a question about whether or not this ends in a culminating share of some families are invited to the school if they ever see this work.
Yeah, they don't, families don't usually see like an imaginative inquiry lesson in action, but we do have cumulative shares where, so for example, actually right before spring break, luckily before we closed school, we had a big share where they transformed our classrooms into a Lenape village, a life-size Lenape village, and they came in, and so the students had learned the context, a lot of the content through imaginative inquiry, but then the share was much more of like a presentation. So it's not often that they see the imaginative inquiry like in action. Like we never put it on as any sort of like play or anything like that.
And Ruth from City and Country was referencing, I believe, the second grade lesson you were showing, Elaine, and wanted to know if you connected that with what was happening currently in New York City.
That is going to happen next week. So we started with the research and getting them back into the 311 calls, and next week we're going to have the calls coming in all about the same problem, and then their departments are going to have to decide what they can do. And we really did debate whether it was, you know, I think for children to be thinking about this all the time is really heavy, but the teachers really thought that this would help them feel a little bit proactive about it and that there are things being done about it. And so the project is going to be to produce a PSA. Each department will produce a PSA to inform the public about what they can do during the pandemic.
If you're on Zoom all day with your kids, would you do the same activity, only without Seesaw?
I would definitely try. I mean, I've definitely been toying with the idea of giving that a try, of doing one more live. You know, I don't know how different it would look because I'd probably just screen share my slides and then narrate. And I suppose the biggest difference would be that when they're stopping to respond to the prompts or the questions, they can be actually hearing each other's ideas. I think that's a challenge right now. Like with Seesaw, for example, they don't see each other's work. So the only way they can hear what each other is saying or responding is if I compile it or we talk about it at a Zoom meeting. I know that Flipgrid, we're not using that, but Elaine mentioned another school is, and I think that's more like they can record themselves and see each other's recordings. So something, but yeah, I mean, I think I would give it a try live, you know.
So Carolina from ISB is wondering how this could be applied to visual arts, and mostly for online learning and directed to younger children who are not very independent.
Applied to visual arts in terms of using drama or holding.
Carolina, you want to speak up? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's Carolina. Yeah, I mean, I just wonder, you know, I mean, art is already a very creative and prone to inquiry, and I'm in a school where that's what we do a lot, but I just wonder how these could be applied, you know, I work for the preschool all through 8th grade, you know, and this is very conductive with certain grades, but I just wonder how it could be applied to younger kids, like very, very young kids, 3-4-year-olds. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I just wonder. I'm not sure what I'm asking, but
I definitely
use some, you know, like sometimes with older kids, I use other things that, like I have these bags with little tiny toys, and we use them to create stories that then they develop compositions out of it. So I just wonder how this could be applied to the
I mean,
visual?
I think for very young kids, it's definitely about storytelling. It's about using music and movement. I think the difficulty with much younger children than, you know, four or five is that a lot of what we do is still basing it in something that is real. So that's why it's such a great method to use when teaching academic work. When children are really going into imaginations and taking it to places that are not necessarily grounded in something that is factual, it's something that we haven't really experimented with. So I think it might be a different thing at that point.
So one final question, I'm going to back up, that was that someone was interested to learn more about roll in a bag and wanted to know if each student has one, and or does the group unearth a bag together? And how do you manage to get all these items together for a whole class?
It's always together. And again, it's something that you don't see when we're trying to do it online, but the collective problem solving is extremely powerful, and it's what allows them to really feel like they're in something together, and they're really this team. And so often the mantle is that they are this team of experts, or this team that's been enlisted to solve this problem, and that really brings this whole community mentality and kind of decision making and problem solving to it.